Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Howard, and I'm the founder and CEO of HR Certified. And thank you so much for registering and giving us your time as it pertains to a very, a topic that has been very center focused, especially post pandemic, whereas the needs and demands of just everybody has changed. And it's all around managing your personal brand. I have here with me a panel in which our goal today is to share our stories as it pertains to building your personal brand. And it begins off with a story. My personal view on this is I have a different view of what personal branding is, and that journey and as a career professional in human resources, that definitely evolved over time. I actually looked at my sister, who's also on the panel, as a role model in this regards. I kind of just tapped into it a whole lot later in my career and in my life. And so I hope that as you're just going through this, that you have a curiosity as it pertains to the importance of a personal brand. And then also, if you were to pursue it, what lessons that we have in our stories on how you can maximize that opportunity of your personal brand. And so before we kind of dive into it, I want to go ahead and just briefly have a chance for everybody to introduce themselves here on the panel. Again, I'm the founder, CEO of HR Certified. I actually transitioned from corporate America about a year ago, last year, after 22 years in human resources. And I use my personal brand to amplify HR Certified, our vision of diversifying the human resource industry and really showing up different in spaces to attract all multi-generational, multicultural into this space, as that's the direction that demographics go. And I use my personal brand because I felt like I needed to in order to truly have a voice in that. I also share my story as it pertains to also finding my identity and living authentically as we're kind of going through this process. But that's me, and I'm also known on the LinkedIn streets as that HR guy. So that is my personal brand as well. So we'll lean more into that. So ladies first, Chivalry's not dead. Siobhan, go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here to share with you today. I spent the last 20 years in corporate, well, 20 years or more in some capacity of media marketing communications, predominantly in the healthcare space. And I made a pivot. It was involuntary, but I voluntarily really wanted it for myself and had to rediscover what it is to be an entrepreneur and to brand myself and my company. And so I'm so excited to share all my best practices here with you guys today. And it's now time for Keisha.
Well, thank you. Hey, everybody. I am Keisha, founder of Sugar Gamers, which is a tech advocacy organization because I want everyone to know the benefits of this 100, 200, $300 billion industry and all the opportunities that are in this space. So I started that company in 2009. So it's been 14 years. And yeah, it's all about creativity and personal branding and finding your authentic self and having a little bit of play at that.
Thanks, Keisha. Last but not least, Jake.
Oh, thank you guys so much. First, I just want to say hi to everybody in the chat. We got Kyle, Jairong. We got so many people. I'm really excited to talk with you all today. And as we're starting here, if you can, drop in the chat exactly what you do, right? Your profession, the role that you guys have, because I really want to drop some very specific information to you guys as we go through this. So please put that in the chat. I want this to be very participatory on your side. But as far as me, yeah, I'm here because Guys, I have the pleasure of working with a company that not only really helps build personal brands, but personal brands that are profitable. Because I think we all have seen sometimes that, yeah, somebody can have a lot of followers. That doesn't always necessarily equate to things like revenue, right? And as entrepreneurs, as people that are professionals inside of the space, we want to make this very, very relevant to you. And I got a lot of strategies. I got a lot of stuff that I want to drop for you in terms of not only building that thought leadership, building that brand, but also doing it in a way that like really adds to the bottom line. Because when we take care of those things, we can really live our purpose. And that is what it is 100% all about. So I'm going to toss the mic back over to Mr. Anthony P. Hauer, that HR guy. And let's get a jamming, man.
Yeah, well, there's different perspectives that we're bringing to the table in this discussion. My view is one that is new as being an entrepreneur. I wrapped my identity to my employer for over 20 years, and now being out on my own, how do I do that, right? And that's a lonely place, and it's very confusing to do if you don't have that support system. So I'm coming from that angle for the majority of you who are HR professionals who are working, and you've thought about entrepreneurship or you thought about building that brand. That's the angle that I'm bringing to the stage. With Siobhan, did you want to show kind of tell everyone kind of like your angle in this discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. So, coming from a corporate background where I always had a marketing budget and I was able to focus on doing marketing in a different capacity with support teams behind me, and then transitioning and pivoting out to doing it all on my own, I had to rethink a lot of things, rethink the way I strategize, rethink the way that I actually put processes into place. Because it was just me, I still needed those processes and they proved more important than ever, being solo. And it was really, really interesting because I wasn't, to what Jake said earlier, I was really putting myself out there, but I wasn't quite putting the strategy behind it initially when I first, stood my company up. And then once I started to transition and develop into my brand promise and then start to build on my reputation, then I was able to really stand up and understand what my brand is now. And so I promise to deliver future health now for all of those who are looking to move into the next, era, especially the next generation.
And I know that our chats are blowing up. I would love for you to tell us where you're from and what you're looking to gain from out of this discussion, because it's an important conversation. Keisha, my sister, why are you here? Why are you on this stage?
I mean, interestingly enough, I never thought I could be an entrepreneur. And the last recession in 2008 sort of made me have to pivot and be creative about moving from real estate into something else and turning your passion into a career and keeping that career, over a long period of time is has been a really interesting experience, right? Because how I started off in 2009, the world is completely different in 2023. And like being able to surf those waves and get over those hurdles and ride those bumps and grow with yourself while you're being an entrepreneur is a really important perspective that I think I would be able to share here.
And this kind of leads on to our first question, y'all. And again, this is a conversation, not a presentation. And that is when it comes down to personal branding, it starts off with your story. It starts off with what is it that makes you unique. And so I wanted to take just a moment to kind of briefly talk about our stories and how we transitioned into what we are today. And I'll start off with me again. I'm an HR professional, right? Strategic partner. I've been in corporate America, and for me, my identity again was wrapped up into my role as HR. Everyone knew me as that HR guy, really, and it took trauma where my grandmother passed, and I suffered through depression to reconcile. Like, who am I? Where am I? Am I employee number 1, 2, 3, or who am I as a person? And in that reconciliation, I found out who I was, and I had to figure out how to not only identify it, but also how uh, to actually redeploy myself out into the world. And so that's where I went into this process of finding that out. But that was a mystery to me. How do I do that? I was so wrapped up into my job or where I was. How do I do that? And so going through this process of defining my brand, and being authentic with it, showing up. It basically, I was this person all this time, but I needed the entrepreneurial aspect of it in order to host events like this, right? If I was an employee, there's not a way in the world that I would be able to host a conversation about how you can tap into your personal brand. And then the other aspect was being able to have balance in my life, balance and where it's not all into one place. It's balance to where if my job end, I'm still okay. Like I'm still living life. I'm still feeling purpose, a sense of purpose. So that's really what transitioned me and what motivated me to be able to do that. And as an entrepreneur, it was very important that all of you knew who I was, right? So I mean that's kind of like the story in a nutshell. And all this time that I was looking at how to do it, I was looking and admiring my sister the entire time as she was building her brand. So Keisha, what was your story? What was your story of why you kind of went down this path, becoming an influencer and speaker and out on the stage?
It's really interesting because like these terms, entrepreneur, influencer, your identity, all these things, were like secondary. Like I just really wanted to solve a problem. I didn't see women of color, and I didn't see people in Chicago that were in my peer group in video games. And that was so weird to me, no, with the way we grew up, right? So the reason why I have Sugar Gamers is because I grew up with a older brother that loves games and worked at all of these establishments, Babbage's, Funko Land, Popcorn Video, and I got access to all these mediums that were very unique to us as Southsider Black kids. And I just knew that that was a unique trait. And at the time I started this organization, I was just like, I just wanted to share that community feeling, that connection over this medium, which is video games, with other people. And I just didn't realize the impact that that would have when I would meet a person and introduce them warmly to a game. Like, isn't this fun? And that connection, that friendship, that relationship that you build and keep building, and then that person brings someone in. And I found that to be not only compelling, but it gave me a huge sense of responsibility, because when we do find our identities, then it does inspire other people to be like, yeah, that's me too, and I want to be a part of this. And then you sort of have that responsibility to kind of keep going. And then that's been the next part of my journey. It's like always knew I was a gamer, but I didn't know that I could turn this into any sort of career until years into me actually having been an entrepreneur, which is insane. But yeah, it's the responsibility to the community that looks at what I'm doing, is inspired by what I'm doing, and then takes action. So it's like that's what leadership is. That's what entrepreneurship is.
Oh my goodness. I mean, you just reminded me, like, look, I'm in this because I got tired of not seeing people that I got tired of not seeing a diversity in this awesome profession of human resources. We are multicultural, we're multi-generational, and it's not reflective. And so I needed this platform in order to show up different so that we could to say that, hey, young people can do it. The people of color can do it. Like anybody can do it. It should be reflective of that. And I needed that platform in order to do it, and had to show up differently to do that. Even though yours is video games, mine was HR rah rah. Siobhan, what got you into this?
Well, I wanted to pivot into my purpose. I had been doing, the work that I had been doing, and I just kind of did some self reflection, especially after having some conversations with my mentors. And one of the questions that came up was, what is it that you really like to do? What do you feel like you're pulled or called to do? And it all kept leading back to social impact marketing and behavioral change. And then that monumental moment when I had to say goodbye to my mom, I realized that health communications really it kind of didn't land with her so that she would do a better job of taking care of herself. And so I figure, with my expertise in writing and all the experience that I have in health comms, and then just being zoomers, that is where I could show up and really make a strong positive by just helping others to be able to stand up messages that communicate for behavioral change, that it really take into perspective the cultures of and the reasons why people make decisions that they make, especially those that influence and impact their health.
Yep. Jake, you heard about these superpowers that we were talking about, and it all leaned into purpose. And as you're just kind of reflecting on that, I need people that are looking at this chat to be able to put into the chat in writing what your superpower is. Everybody has a gift, and it's meant to be shared. Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah, man, that's so true. And we've got a lot of different, just like a wide range of people here in terms of what they're currently doing, right? And maybe that matches up with what your overarching purpose is, or maybe there is a slight potential disconnect there. And in either of those two situations, listen, it's okay. Like we've all come and experienced these things. And I would actually say, like, if you're listening to this, and I know listening to the other panelists here, like there's some pretty common themes, right? There's these feelings of, hey, like I have a purpose. I was meant to do something. But the other side of the coin, because every coin has two sides, right, is actually like some element of, I don't want to call it like pain, but like frustration of feeling like you were meant for something more that was perfectly aligned with you. And, you know, that might be something. Well, I'll ask you, have you ever felt that in your life? Maybe you're feeling it right now. And if you are, it's okay. I mean, that's why we're here. And you guys have all made the first step. You're here. So, if you're excited to learn some tips, I'd love to see some ones in the chat. But we've literally got people, from engineers, right? HR specialists, a lot of people in HR, DEI, all this kind of stuff. And, the cool thing is, like, in our brokenness, we often find part of our purpose. Like in the pain, we often find our purpose. They're often very much linked together. And mine for sure has 100% been linked to that stuff. I'm not going to go into the gory details because I want to get into the value for you guys. But
Yeah.
I've built multiple brands for myself. One of them, and the reason I'm going to say this is because I'm going to give you guys a freebie at the end if you do stick around, that shows you actually how to turn not just a personal brand and build that, but turn it into 100K a month type situations. Which I don't know about you guys. Drop a that's me in the chat if you want to do 100K months. But really learn not only how to connect with people, but also how to help other people with this, and even more so, really understand kind of like the behavioral economics behind what drives people to actually be moved to action, to become like some of your biggest fans, people that support you in the business and people that you can help. So, a lot of times we have to have this purpose because it is a journey. You've heard from Anthony, you've heard from Keisha, you've heard from Siobhan. It is a journey. It is something that it's not going to happen overnight. Spoiler warning. Sorry, it's not going to happen tomorrow,
No.
but it's 100% possible. And we're going to talk about some stuff, some meta stuff, as well as some strategy. One of those is authenticity, right? Like, you got to be authentic because you just burn out if you don't. But I'll pass the mic back to you.
Well, there's multiple elements that defines what a personal brand look like. And it's different to different people, right? So our audience here, branding is different than it would be probably for others. And so I wanted to just take a moment on what is personal branding. What are the different elements that is essential to bringing a personal brand. So with me being in the human resources industry, there are certain aspects that come along with that just for so number one, you got to be polished, right? You got to be polished. If your website looks crazy, if you don't show up, and have a professional sense about it, if you're not knowledgeable, if you're not consistent, like there's elements that comes up with that, and that you show up, right? That you are able to meet HR professionals kind of like where they are, and that you share those same passions, and show up in the spaces that they show up. Like in LinkedIn is where HR lives, right? And I have been where most HR professionals have been, and I've navigated those spaces. So being able to connect in that aspect, that you show up as an HR pro, and that's so for me, that's on LinkedIn, that's in conferences, that's having forums like this, as well as building those relationships. That's absolutely key, and showing and helping others, right? And showing up, and when there's need for professional development, and adding value, as well. So, and being available, being accessible, because I know a lot of times that's hard when you got 1,000 things on your plate. But that's a part of the branding as well. I when I first started doing this and I started reaching out to people, I actually was kind of disappointed because some of the people who I really looked at as kind of like my role model on this platform didn't even respond to me. And I was just so shocked to the people that I identified with, and I said, well, I'm had to show up different. And so when people reach out to me, they're like, "Oh my God, is you actually answering the phone? Is actually you responding?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because I'm a person." And that's how I show up. And that's that part connected to that authenticity, part as well. So Siobhan, how do you show up in your personal branding?
Well, I like to think of it, the brand as a promise. And so, like you said, consistently showing up in those circles and areas going to be offering value aligned to my brand. I want people to be able to answer the question of who am I, me at a time when they need those particular services or advice or influence. And when I first started the whole branding journey, I was a little bit all over the place. And it was like, well, I see you all over the place, Siobhan, but I don't quite know what it is that you do.
I
And
had that
so
too. Oh my goodness.
so then that's when I really got really laser focused and decided, you know what? I need to start implementing those large company strategies for my own brand. And then that's when I started to make the difference. So I really believe that I'm an enthusiastic collaborator, and that is my true superpower. But yes, being able to be deliver in an authentic way about the things that I value the most, and being able to share from a very compassionate way, and from the heart, because people can see right through that, and they can know, where my heart lies, and it should all align. So your values in the heart and where you're thinking should all go in the same direction. And then that's when you have that cohesive brand, and then you're able to deliver upon it with the reputation. So
Yeah, and know, guys, that you are not your job description, right? You're just not your company. The things that you accomplish, those experiences are you, and that's still your brand, right? So,
mhm.
that's awesome, Keisha.
I guess for me, I had to, because I was pretty introverted, so I'm in my head a lot. So I had to do some other things to really kind of start articulating what my personal brand was. So like, there's just so many things I'm curious about, and I loved doing, but I didn't really know how that came across as helpful to others. So how I ended up kind of developing a narrative and developing language around how to describe myself is, the first thing I did was go to my support system, go to people that I felt knew me well, and ask them what they thought I was doing, which was a really interesting sort of experiment to see what words other people would use to describe my work, my personality, and then pick and choose, like, is that correct? Is that not correct? Is that what I want to be seen as? And kind of sort of, modify accordingly so I could get, laser focused on really what message I wanted to leave with people. That, and then also, what is it that I'm going to take with me to every single place that I go? Like, no matter where I work, no matter what am I doing, what is it that's going to remain consistent? Right? Because your jobs might change, your location might, anything in your life could change, but there's this nugget of you that should remain consistent and authentic and part of who you are. So being able to have language around that has been super important, and at times it has evolved. So as I mature, having more elevated approaches to talking about my personal brand, like starting off with my personal brand in 2009, as opposed to 14 years later in 2023, I'm gonna have to have different words that sort of encompass those experiences that go into that. So it's been an interesting journey. I don't think it really stays. You don't calcify around a personal brand, but it should contain the components that you can evolve with. And you should be able to ask people what they think you do, and it should be in alignment with what you're trying to communicate.
Oh my goodness, yes, that's so awesome. I volunteered in front of a group of young high schoolers, and I asked them. I didn't. I just told them my name, my first name, and I presented in front of them, and I asked them what they thought about me, and then I asked them to find me on the internet. And so they found me, and when they did find me, they I asked them whether or not what they saw on the internet was consistent with what they're experiencing in the room, and they said, yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things where you do need to have some alignment. You need to show up and be consistent, regardless of where you are. And everybody that's listening right now, I want you to think about your personal brand, regardless of where. I mean, you have a brand, right? Regardless of whether or not it's searchable on Google or not, and put that in the chat. What's your brand, right? And that challenge that Keisha had, which was, do other people see you that way, right? And having that consistency to it. Jake, what are your thoughts about this conversation, on how people define themselves in their personal branding?
Yeah, for sure. And guys in the chat, I'm going to bounce between, academic research that's actually out there when it comes to not only how do you move people forward with you, like how do you influence people? And that's not a dirty word. Neither is persuasion, even manipulation. Semiotically, it sounds like a bad thing, but really, what all of these things are, what they boil down to, influence, brand, what it boils down to is really leadership. It is truly leadership. It is taking a stand for something. It is really a testament of your essence. And with this, this is one of the scariest things that I see. I've gone through it, and I think just about all of us have gone through it, is that as you step into yourself, you create polarity. You create this magnetism that both pushes people away and draws people near. And when you first experience it, it can be, for myself, very scary. But what truly comes out of that is this: you become a symbol for something. And it can be a symbol for a way of life. It can be a symbol for the thing that you believe in to the highest order that dictates your life. It can be so many different things. And that's such a beautiful thing, because as you get clear on yourself, right? And we've all kind of like put out content in a lot of different ways. But as we start to truly align with something, everything starts emanating with this energy that pulls people in, and yes, it will repel certain people. And that's actually a sign that things are working.
Yeah.
um, doesn't feel like it at first, but it really is a sign that things are working. And for me, just because I haven't even really mentioned it, my brand, the thing that I'm building now is really around this concept of pre-influence. It's academic research that's been around for 40, 50 years, and it's continuing to stack things like behavioral economics, persuasion, influence. But how I've asked myself the question, like, I care so much about people. I always have. You can ask my mom, even since I was a little kid. I wanted to do big things. I wanted to help people. But I've always asked myself the question, why do people do things that are against what's best for them to do? Why do people avoid that? And it's always been something circling in my head for a very long time, and it's distilled down into this thing that I've discovered, I've researched, I've poured hundreds and thousands, well, yeah, no, probably over 1,000 hours into researching it, understanding it. And for me now, it just emanates. Like, I could talk endlessly about it. And that is such a cool thing. Like, we all have these symbols that we stand for. All of us on here, all of you out there, like, there's things that emanate out of you that, as the other panelists mentioned, like, you can ask people and get feedback. Like, what is kind of my thing? Like, what do you feel? What are the things that you get from me? That, like, forget about my job title. What do I stand for? Right? And that gives you some really great data. And you might, I would argue that your internal knowing, your gnosis already knows that. Maybe just not that confirmation at the current moment.
Yeah. And you know what? And that's a perfect bridge to our next topic, which is this is not easy. This is not easy. It's some restless nights. There's some tears that's going on. There's a lot of things. It is not for the faint of heart. It comes with its shared challenges. So I wanted to kind of talk about the reality of things with this. I'm a new hire as it pertains to entrepreneurship. Keisha and Jake definitely got a little bit more experience with this. Siobhan and I, we're in this boat together, right? Um, Share some hurdles and setbacks that you face in developing, establishing your brand. I think my first one was really understanding where I fit into the scheme of things. I think I heard you say, Siobhan, just like, oh, you're great, Anthony, but what do you do? Like, what exactly do you do? Okay, do you teach? Like, what is it that you do? And I really had to go through a process of trying to figure out and define that. I knew who I was, but it was muddled out there. The others was just understanding that your barometer of success changes.
Mm-hmm.
My barometer of success used to be numerically what my social security statement looked like at the end year to year, and when that number went up, that meant there was progress, right? But that's different now, right? Going from W-2 to bottom line, it's about really a sense of fulfillment, a sense of self-actualization is my barometer of success. And then there's a lot of noise, by being on a platform like this. You're going to get hit up to open up franchises. You're gonna get hit up from just service providers everywhere. I mean, it's a lot of noise, and you got time management, right? Which is, you got to really be surgical, as I say, with the use of your time. And there's a greater responsibility of being on this platform. The internet is forever, right? That's what I say. And the internet is forever. So just the way you show up and everything is a different landscape when the internet is your audience. I'm gonna mix it up this time. Keisha, what has been your challenges that you've been kind of, and financing? Okay,
Oh yeah,
did I say?
don't forget
Yeah, I
about
don't know why I say that out there. Understanding let me connect that to understanding your worth, right? Yeah, that's a conundrum, because I don't like the word sales, right? That in my mind is a dirty word, especially for somebody that's coming from HR. We're all about people, those type of things. So yeah, you're right. I just did a whole list. Okay, Keisha, what's your...
I mean, and this goes to a question in the chat too, by John Singleton. Have you ever feared overselling yourself? And that's a thing too, because when you first come out as an entrepreneur, you're like, it's very new, and you can seem super thirsty. You can, are you bothering people? Are you putting too much out? Are you putting too little out? And like knowing what that cadence is of how people are going to, I guess, engage with whatever content or messaging you're putting out is like it's I think the whole thing about being an entrepreneur is number one, being prepared to experiment and being able to withstand failed experiments to get information about like what to do next. So like on the internet and in our public discourse, we see so many people that seem like they just come out the gate and they're immediately successful. And that's just so not a realistic idea about what this looks like. It always usually takes time, a significant amount of time and sacrifice. So, the challenge of that is like, can you run your reps? Can you deal with the ups and downs? Do you have like the inner fortitude and passion to just keep pushing through when things get hard? Because there's some really fun times about being an entrepreneur and meeting people that are really into what you're doing. But then, like, as an adult, you have to sustain yourselves tangibly. So, like, you might have the community, but then you don't have the actual resources to make this sustainable, and having that balance between like making sure that you show up authentically and then making sure that you can eat and pay your bills, and then making sure that you're servicing your audience, your community. That is an extreme balancing act, and it's not always something that people can be successful at without like burnout to themselves, without some hiccups here and there. So that's been like a big challenge. And then just also like, hey, you find your stride, and then things happen in the world that completely change the conversation. So, like in these last 4 years, we've had so much discourse about what's happening socially, politically, environmentally, economically, and trying to make sure that your messaging is sensitive to this news that we're all impacted by is also really difficult. Like, do you say anything at all? Do you acknowledge it, or do you just keep going? And these are human choices that we constantly need to sort of balance out. Like, how are we staying authentic? If we're impacted by something that we hear in the news, or we're impacted by something personally that people don't know, but we're pretending like we're okay. Um, there's all these things that are very just our human challenges while we're navigating this. But what I will say, after saying all that hard, discouraging stuff, is that, like, think of it this way, and this is how I've gotten through the challenges. We spend so much of our time at work producing something of value. We spend so much of our lives doing that. So if we can find a way to do that without so much sacrifice to our personal identity, all of these things are absolutely worth it.
Mm. I look. I want her to repeat that all over again. Okay, that is awesome. Awesome. I had to pause. If you felt what Keisha just said, could you put a 10 in the chat? Because that had me pause for a moment. Okay, Siobhan, I thought you were taking notes.
Yes, indeed. Oh my gosh. And I think I have so many things I could add to that. But one thing that I would love to add on to what Keisha said is the whole idea and concept about burning yourself out. Because I'm so good at so many different things and people know that I can do certain things, I had to be very intentional about building a business that I enjoy and one that I could lead with my gifts and that I was going to be happy and satisfied doing. Um, you have to decide what problem do you want to solve and how you want to show up and deliver value for the world. And it's not always some things that you can do. You have to be intentional about what it is that you're going to provide, and making sure that you kind of find the harmony in how you show up and you deliver.
Look, tens is blowing up in the chat, Keisha. 'Cause that was a nugget. People felt it. People
Yes.
felt it. Jake, I know you've been in the background. I know you've been absorbing it all. Challenges and building your brand and how to navigate it. The realities of this thing, but the benefits of it all.
Yeah, for sure. And everyone in the chat, I really appreciate the amount of engagement that you guys are bringing, and I'd really love, you guys to keep it up.
100.
Like bring a lot of questions, because one, that's guiding me, it's guiding us, because this is right a conversation, and also we're gonna have a Q&A at the end as well. So please ask this stuff, and you know I'm going to take a different approach to this question, and it's just a different perspective, right? Because there's many different ways to look at the same table, and it looks different from different sides. And I truly believe that burnout comes from a couple different things. Burnout comes from when we are actually misaligned with our purpose and a improper expectation. An expectation always, always leads to disappointment, because we're not perfect and we're never going to hit the mark 100% of the time, in my opinion. However, when we truly are aligned with something that resonates with us, and we actually change, if we change the frame of reference, I'm literally talking to myself here. I've had a conversation with a mentor of mine that I was like, man, things aren't growing in terms of the revenue, in terms of the this, in terms of that, the followers, the numbers, all this kind of stuff. And, he said, well, how many people saw this one reel that you did? I was like, well, 1,000. He's like, I want you to think about what 1,000 people look like inside of a room, and they're watching you. Now, inside of those 1,000 people, what if one of them, just one of them, is your ideal client, the ideal person that you can help? And you made one reel and it took you 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Is it worth it? I'm like, of course it is. Changing the frame of reference sometimes completely changes our expectation. When we change our expectation, we actually drop it back down into service to other people, right? When our content, when our brand is aligned in that way, it really changes things in my perspective. And sometimes, if we're not taking into consideration what our goal is, and that's a question that I believe John asked a little bit earlier, like what is the goal with a brand? Well, that's a question we need to ask for ourselves. Some of us want to grow a brand for some thought leadership. Well, what's the gauge, the metric of success there? Like, if we're putting out content, absolutely, make no mistake about it. If you're simply putting out content, no matter how many views it is, but you're talking authoritatively about a subject that somebody needs help with and that you are selling, I don't think it's a dirty word, because sales to me is where transformation happens in people's lives. But if you're putting out content that can directly help someone, now they see you as more of an expert, let alone all the other kind of authority generators out there. We've hit our mark. If it is to generate revenue, well, there's some other strategies, and I'm going to share some with you with a freebie, but we really need to know what is our mark? What is it that we are really trying to achieve with our brand? And if we do that, we reframe our expectations, I think a lot of that burnout actually goes away. And that's just my humble opinion.
Now, I want to be considerate of everybody's time, because this is a very engaging conversation that we're doing here. Because I realized after we started that this could be a 3-part series. Okay.
Good.
With just so much knowledge, so much experiences. So I'm a fast forward to a question that kind of came up over and over again, and that's as it relates to authenticity in personal branding. So I'm a fast forward real quick to that. And the question here is, you know, the authenticity is crucial. And I think that's what I lean in the most about all of this is that I can be authentic. I found myself by through my personal branding. How do you make sure, because that's the balance Keisha had talked about a lot, that your personal brand reflects your true self and your values and things? Because I I know for me, I know that when there's a misalignment between what people present and what they are, I I can't participate in that. Right. I'm not connected to those type of brands. I need consistency. Like the way you see me now is the way I am even when you have one-on-ones with me. Right. So again, I'm again, everybody's different. I'm speaking from my perspective. So I keep it consistent. That's the answer for me. Siobhan, let me start with you. Like, how do you navigate that? I mean, because there is a balance though, right? Where it's like you can't be so transparent because there's some things that should be private, um, and there are some opinions that that may not you may not want to display, right?
Mhm.
That might hurt the brand, but it's still yourself. So when you think about those things, how do you navigate that?
I tend to lean into context in where I'm sharing. So, I mean, if we're in a community such as this very public platform, I will be authentic, transparent, and vulnerable. However, if you catch me at HR offline, I may be willing to share a little bit deeper because there's a sense of community and I'm really trying to have an impact and really um, share some experiences that can enlighten and empower those that are in attendance and that they came for that. So I think it really just depends on the medium, the channel, and the expected outcome that I'm looking for at any given moment.
I had to break the PowerPoint down. I feel like we're closer now. Okay,
Yes.
the PowerPoint slide made it crowded. Okay, I'm like, hey, how y'all doing again? All right, Keisha, how you balance that? You got a lot of authenticity in your background. What's going on?
How do I balance like authenticity with?
Your personal brand, like just how do you your values to your true self, and your personal brand to your true self and values. How do you align that? How do you keep that? Because you have brought it up, just like when social issues are going on. Like I'll give you an example. Um, when like when social issues happen about like woke, right? And my view of it is that I feel like I'm learning my history all over again, right? Things that are happening and you hear things where it's politicized around learning that history as part of standard, right? Christopher Columbus discovered America when I was in grammar school.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
how do you balance that when I'm that HR guy, right? Just kind of similar to like how you balance it in your brand.
I mean, I think Jake said something to this earlier. Like, there's just some people who are not going to like where you go with yourself and with your brand, and to just be ready for that. I think one of the challenges I had is I wanted everybody to like me, and I wanted everybody to dig what I had to say, and I didn't want to like make anybody mad, and I didn't want to have any friction, and so then I was trying to be like sort of universally
Oh,
people pleaser,
yeah.
universally liked. And when
That
these
doesn't exist.
I'm
There's
sorry.
no such thing as that. Everybody's not gonna be everybody's cup of tea. I
Yeah,
I
no,
know I'm not.
like, yeah. So, and like, I think for me, when I was still like trying to, be in corporate, that was like part of the game. Like, let me interview perfectly. Let me know everything to do. Let me be so great at Excel and Word and PowerPoint. Like, let me just be perfect at everything. And then where does that get you? It gets you more work.
Yes.
It gets more people expecting you to produce more without necessarily being rewarded. So who are you, being so perfect for and likable for? Um, and then also I want to incorporate an answer to Mary, right? She's like, how can introverts be more proactive. And like as an introvert and trying to be authentic in this space, one thing that I can say that would be an introvert superpower is that there is not a need to react to things immediately as they come up. So extroverts are just like, this happened 2 minutes ago. I got to put it on the internet right now. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the other flavors of people can like be more thoughtful about it. They can, and I like what Jake said about like reframing some of the ways that we approach this. Instead of being like, oh, I have to be the one reacting, you could be the one um actually supporting other people's reactions while you're sort of taking it all in, and seeing like what other people are thinking and doing, and showing up as a support that way where people are using their platforms. So like one of the things that I think would be sort of a credit to some of my success and some of my ways to balance this all out is that I don't we can take turns. Like as my personal brand is only relevant and successful as it is because other people acknowledge it. So to go full circle, I have to go and acknowledge other people and what they're doing. Sometimes I have to take time and not put myself at the center, but like center other people during these times. So instead of being like, oh, I know everything, hey, sometimes it's really important, and it gives you more depth when you wait a little while and see what other people are feeling and thinking, and then going back into that like authentic self to see how you can be of service after you have a little bit more information, after you've taken a little bit more time to process your personal feelings, your professional feelings, if you will, and how you want to show up in a way that still has value, for that's still in alignment with who you are. So I think that a lot of times we live in this very high paced world, so we just feel like we have to just be on top of things immediately, and that's just not the case. There's more than one way to do this. There's more than one way to reframe how we show up as ourselves.
Now, everything that we just talked about, just let you know that this building your personal brand is multi-layered, it's multifaceted, it's multidimensional. There's a lot of elements to it. So we're going to spend the last few minutes that we have on some tips as it pertains to if you are interested in your advice as it pertains to how you build your personal brand. If you don't know where to start, or if you haven't, how to retool it. And then Jake had mentioned some resources as well to continue the conversation, because of course there's many other elements of this that we wish that we could talk about. I'm just thinking about that meeting in which look, don't be going over, because I need to get back, right. I'm here until 1 o'clock, right. So I am going to ask if we could give some quick tips on what best piece of advice for someone who wants to build their brand and don't know where to start. And mine is, you can't do this alone. You I think the number one mistake that I had was that I had all this knowledge on human resources, and I had the brand, like I had my logo, and everything, and I said they're going to come hither, and that's not the case. And even then, you still need strategic partnerships, and know that this is not a one-way street, right. That there's partnership, and partnership is some give, some take, but you cannot, regardless of how good you think you are, you cannot do this by yourself. Siobhan, what's your advice?
I would say understand that evolution is imminent. It's okay to start somewhere and you can grow from there. It won't be perfect. And just build something that you're proud of and that really aligns with who you are and how you want to show up. And don't be afraid to iterate.
Yep. And just know there were a lot of questions in the chat. We won't be able to answer them live, but we are committed that we're going to follow up in the comments section to
Mhm.
answer your questions. So keep them coming. Keep them coming. Keisha?
I think that if you feel stagnant or feel bored, that's where, your real creativity is, because you're doing something that's you need to evolve from. And I think sometimes we don't listen to ourselves, we don't listen to our hearts, and it's like you feeling stagnant, you feeling bad. That means it's time for you to evolve, to shift, to change.
Okay. And Jake, I'm gonna give you the last what 3 minutes to kind of download and give our audience some tips and some takeaways. Uh-oh, you on mute. This is a Beyonce challenge. Everybody on
Oops.
mute.
Sarah, if you can drop my link in the chat, that is going to be where you guys can sign up to get this 100K a month blueprint. It's a Calendly thing. It was the quickest way I could get your email. I will send it out to you. Just sign up for a random time slot on there. I'm just going to send it out to you personally after. Anyways, I'm going to take the next like 60 to 120 seconds to try to download some information as it pertains to how to make some money with a personal brand, because I believe in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if we actually hit that base level of security, obviously hit our physiological needs, food, shelter, all that kind of stuff, we actually start to unlock what it is that we truly, 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 truly want to do. So with that right there, I think the new way of really kind of being an influencer, building a brand, is not focusing on how many people that you have, but how many of the right people that you have. So get it out of your head that you need to have 100,000, a million followers. You can have 1,000 of the right followers. And that follows with Kevin Kelly's 1,000 true fans. If you have a service that is providing value to people at $10,000 a year, how many do you need to have a six-figure business, which is the first level kind of business, right? To like kind of hit that, I'm free, I can do whatever I want, or, continue working in a side gig. You need 10. You need 10. That's it. So with that being said, here's what I'm going to say. Really to build this type of relationship, it's all based off of value. And there is a golden ratio when it comes to value to get people to get engagement with you and also want to move forward in using your services. If that is your goal and it's 3-1, you should be getting them 3 wins before you ever make an ask. So if you always lead with value, you actually build things, systems, processes, things that you can give people with zero expectation in return, but simply because you are a good person and you want to help. Guess what that actually turns to? Number one, there's energetic alignment. People can feel that through and through. Number two, it actually results in relationships, and relationships are the lifeblood of business. Business is a human to human sport. Make no mistake about it. If you are in B2B, if you are in HR, if you are in sales, if you are in B2C, it does not matter. Sales, business is always human to human. And if you start speaking to people's beliefs, to their identities, you truly become a leader, and people will be so attracted to you. You build people up, you see their potential, you step into their world more. If you step into their world and see their reality, but you do not buy their limiting beliefs, if you care more about them than they care about themselves and see their potential, you unlock massive, massive things. I'm going to drop that blueprint for you guys. It's in the chat there. So if you go on Calendly, just put in your email. I'm going to send you the blueprint. No strings attached. What am I doing? Leading with value. You guys don't do anything besides read it. I love it. I hope it helps you. If there's ways that we can help you as a company, that's great too. If not, I want every last one of you to win. So appreciate you being here with you guys.
Yeah, and again, everybody here served an important role in my journey to where I'm at right now. They wouldn't be here. HR, we don't refer unless we believe in it. And Jake, my conversation with Jake is what kind of led me. You like, how is he up on these interviews and billboards and articles and all that stuff? Is just because I had a conversation with Jake. And that allowed me to begin my personal development journey, accelerate it, and I'm better for it. Jake was just telling me before we came on that I look brighter, I look younger, I look like I've kind of went back in the hands of time. Keisha's smiling because she know I didn't even used to smile. But find your purpose, lean into it, and lead with your voice and make a difference. Change what I say. Change begins with the conversation, and you got to be ready to have it.
Yes.
Uh, so thank you, Siobhan. Thank you, Keisha, and thank you, Jake. Anything that you have in the chat, we'll see you there. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Ciao.
And when everybody was engaged, I love it.
Yes.